Yes, everyone's in.
Good, it's it. Okay.
Yeah, so go.
The time being 1 minute past 3, I good afternoon and welcome them to this meeting of the Randwick Local Planning Panel. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the various lands we occupy for this meeting, the Aboriginal people, spirits and ancestors. We pay our respects to elders past and present. The meeting today is to consider the determination of 3 applications. We will deal with them in the order shown on the agenda. The panel members for this meeting are myself, Lindsay Fletcher, as the Independent Chair, Jason Perica and Peter Rommey as the Independent Expert members, and the Community member, Peter Ryan. This meeting is being held by video conference, as is self-evident, due to the COVID-19 precautions. As the panel chair, I'm requesting that you be considerate and respectful of each other and remain on mute until I ask you to speak at the meeting. I also request that none of you interject while another person is speaking, otherwise I will have to request that you are excluded from the meeting. The panel operates in terms of a code of conduct and operating guidelines, which have been modified to facilitate effective functioning of the panel during these difficult times. The temporary changes are available on the Council's website. The public meeting will be recorded and will be placed on the Council's website following the meeting. If that is of concern to you on privacy grounds, then I suggest that you take it into consideration in your decision to make a public statement before the panel today. In terms of the code, general declarations of interest have been provided before the meeting by all panel members, as well as a specific declaration of interest in relation to the matters being considered today. I can confirm that all declarations of interest have been received and that no members of the panel have declared a conflict of interest on any item. The signed declarations of interest will be available to view through Council's website by tomorrow afternoon. I also wish to advise that all members of the public addressing the panel today must declare, prior to commencing their address, any political contributions or donations made over the past 2 years exceeding $1,000 to any political party or candidate who contested the last ordinary election of the Council. Our usual practice is to allow each speaker 3 minutes to present, including speakers representing community groups, individuals, or the applicant. If you have registered to speak, your address to the panel will be recorded. You'll be given a warning sound 30 seconds or so before your time limit, and I have a limited discretion to allow extra time if appropriate, but we do have a significant number of people registered to speak. We will first hear from councillors, followed by members of the public, and then from the applicant in each case. The panel has been provided with a copy of all the submissions received in response to the public exhibition of the applications. Therefore, there is no need for speakers to repeat points made in those submissions. I ask that each speaker be heard in silence while they are addressing the panel, and that courtesy and respect be observed throughout this meeting. There is to be no personal criticism directed at any speaker or council staff. Any such criticism would be contrary to the panel's code of conduct and will not be accepted. Panel members may ask questions of the speakers to clarify our understanding of what is being said. After hearing from all speakers, the panel will adjourn to debate the matters and to make its determinations. If more information is required by the panel, the decision may be to defer the matter either for a further public meeting or to be dealt with electronically. The panel decision and recording will be made available, as I've said, on Council's website as soon as possible, usually the following day. There is to be no recording of this meeting other than the official recording. So moving on to we have 3 items before us today. We'll now move to the first of those items, which is DA 119 of 2020 for 54B Bream Street, Kuji. We have 6 people registered to speak, 3 councillors, 2 objectors and the applicant. So I now invite the first of those speakers, Councillor Anthony Andrews, to address the panel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, members of the panel. My name is Councillor Andrews. I'm a councillor of Randwick City Council, and I've been representing the community now for over 20 years. As a community representative, one of the key objectives to my role is to ensure that the best interests of our community and city are met. That being the case in regards to the subject application, like Randwick Council's assessment officers, I also strongly support this children's Learn to Swim facility and also agree it be approved as per the recommendation. All the technical issues have been addressed by the planning staff in the assessment report, having considered any traffic acoustics, access and amenity concerns. The proposed use will have no adverse effects to the amenity as demonstrated in the report, and as such is recommended for approval by our council planning officers. But what it will provide is a very high standard of children's learning to swim school located in the lower level of an existing building, which coincidentally is now shortlisted in our council's Architectural and Urban Design Awards of 2020. This is a facility located in an appropriate recreational location, which serves of a great importance to our community. Teaching our children to swim is an essential service. The development of safety and survival is crucial. We unfortunately still have so many drownings at our beaches every year. Anything we can do is possible to minimise this occurrence is very important. The availability of such a service close to our beachside location, Kuji, only further demonstrates its importance and its necessity in our community. I have many parents that come to me asking for additional services such as these be provided. I also have parents that have expressed their support and desire for this centre to be opened as soon as possible. Many parents choose not to take their children to swimming lessons due to the lack of such indoor services in our local area. We have many families in our community that rely on unregulated lessons in backyard swimming pools to teach their loved ones how to swim. This is an opportunity to provide a service that is regulated in a controlled environment. For this reason, I support this application. I strongly believe it's in the public interest to do so. I just bring to the panel's attention also, so the panel's mindful of a previous application this panel dealt with at 90 Lochmarie Street, Maroubra, which was a similar application for a swim school. The panel approved that application in accordance with the council officers' recommendations. And I note in that application, the key issues were acoustics, privacy, traffic and parking impacts, access. These are the same issues in this application as well. And I asked the panel to support this application in light of the panel's previous decision to approve 90 Lochmarie Street, which was a swim school. And I note in that particular matter, there was over 50 to 60 objectors to that particular application, but the panel
Councillor,
approved it in its public interest.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask you to wrap up?
Yeah, I've wrapped up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do panel members have any questions of the councillor? I'm getting nods, so thank you, councillor.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is again a councillor, Councillor Kathy Nielsen. Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Chair and panel. I'm first reading a brief statement from Councillor Shuri. She asked me to say a few words on her behalf. She has a meeting at this same time. She says, if a swimming pool had been included in the original development application, I very much doubt it would have been approved. It seems to me that the developers of this space and the building are being rewarded for what is an illegal building. It highlights the problems associated with the private certification system currently allowed. It is my opinion that no permission should be granted to use this wrongly built space. My speech now is that along similar lines, I'm sure if the panel members were presented with a DA for this swim school in this location, you would be amazed by the outrageous tenacity of the applicant to suggest such a proposal. However, here it is and here you are. I can't support approval for this DA, even in its amended form. The reasons for refusal by the Rlpp state that the current lift and ground floor lobby are adequate for the current tenants, but it has not been demonstrated how this will adequately support an additional use without causing conflict. The panel considers any future application should investigate opportunities to increase the lobby area, lift capacity, include a possible additional lift to service the lower ground floor, or alternative access. And on page 17 of today's business paper, it is stated, however, concerns are raised regarding the management of this proposal in relation to restricting access for a limited period and the enforcement of the lift access. As such, should the application be approved, it is considered that access to the swim school be via the stair only at all times and lift access only permitted by persons with a disability to minimise impacts upon existing users of the building and prevent conflict for other users within the building. The stair has a separate external entrance on the front building facade, and therefore appropriate signage would need to be installed to clearly identify the entrance to the swim school and ensure users utilise the stair for access and not the lobby area. Now, if I were a prospective client, I would be horrified to anticipate that I would be expected to take children or an adult learning to swim to a flight of stairs to enter and exit for a lesson at a swimming school. What's more, I believe I am being asked to use the fire stairs. Anyone familiar with the behaviour of children know that it's extremely difficult to anticipate how long they will take to walk up and down a flight of stairs. And of course, God forbid there is an accident. Also, if fire stairs are being used, wouldn't there need to be regular practices of how to use the stairs in case of an emergency? Access of the swimming school via fire stairs is surely not an acceptable way of entering a lesson. Also, where would those waiting for their lessons be standing? On the street or in the stairwell? However, either of these options are not appropriate. And imagine if there were an emergency with this area already congested. How could an appropriate and smooth emergency process operate? And is the panel ensure the ventilation is satisfactory in this area? The pool is chlorinated, so ventilation is crucial, and so too is storage of chlorine. Now, at this swim school...
Councillor, can I ask you to wrap up really quickly? Thank you.
If this swim school is to be allowed to operate, I would prefer the numbers to be even more severely reduced. I can't see how it can be appropriate for any more than a maximum of 2 children per lesson could possibly be appropriate. I urge the panel to refuse this application.
Thank you, Councillor. Panel members, any questions of Councillor Nielsen?
None from me.
No.
Panel, can I just, I'm sorry, Mr. Fletcher. Gary Blandy wanted to speak today and he's currently just had a hip operation. So I know he was going to request permission to speak. I'm not sure whether it's been granted, but if he couldn't make it, he did actually ask me to read his report.
Sorry, Gary Blandy is?
An objector.
An objector, and he's made a submission to the panel.
He has, but then he's updated it. Obviously, I can, if you like, I can email it to Frank to then present it to you if you would prefer.
I think that's preferable.
I'll do that.
Thank you. So our next speaker is another councillor, Councillor Harry Stavros. Councillor, are you there?
Councillor Stavrinos, you're on mute.
Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you now.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. My apologies. I'm talking to you from my iPhone. Anyway, look, my name is Councillor Harry Stavrinos. I've been a Randwick City Councillor for the last 8 years, and I've been compelled today to talk on behalf of this applicant because I was contacted by him, and I was shocked to learn that that this development application, which has been with council for over 2 years, is still hasn't been approved, even though the applicant themselves and council's engineers and planners have addressed, a number of the issues, and the applicant has done so by putting together an acoustic report and a parking engineer's report, and it has been given recommendation for approval by council. Since this DA first came to council back in 2018, we have seen the applicant make several drastic changes to their application, all in the name of trying to appease objectors. And now that we have an application which is compliant with the backing of council staff, I don't understand what the problem is or why this application is still being subjected to scrutiny. I know that it was raised earlier, issues relating to occupational health and safety, that if there was an emergency, it would be difficult for students and parents to be able to get out. Are we now going to say that our council planners did not take into account these circumstances when giving an approval to such an application? I should hope not. And I don't see this to be a valid argument against this particular development application. What we're talking about is a learn to swim school that has been subjected to any number of tests. They've reduced the number of students going to the classes to only 6, and they've even reduced the number of hours of operation, but limited to Thursdays and Fridays of being at 4 p.m, so that they could appease any concerns that have been raised. And I don't understand, at a time when we should be encouraging our children to be active, and with Australia having one of the largest number of drownings, we have any number of drownings every year in Australia, why would we be discouraging this type of facility, which will add to the amenity of our area and will be an asset to our community? Why would we be discouraging such an asset from going ahead or being approved? I thought I would talk on this matter because it's really, when the applicant did approach me, I found it to be amazed. I was amazed that it still is with council and is still being considered for recommendation, for approval. So, look, we are talking about a DA which is surrounded by residential dwellings, which would cause noise concerns. And we are talking about a swim school that will have 20 to 30 kids swimming about. We are talking about a modest 6-student swim school, which has the backing of Swim Australia and the Surf Lifesaving Association, and will keep our kids active at a time when we are all facing adverse pressures. The school will also add to the business model of the premise where it is situated, and it will increase the patronage. And at a time now where we've got businesses suffering, what business would turn down having a business there to bring more people in? I don't understand that. Look, on that note, I'll leave it at that, and that's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just say that we're dealing with an application lodged this year. It's not a 2-year-old application.
Okay.
And, this is the first occasion the panel's had to consider the matter. A previous application, I think, was rejected, but this is a new application.
Okay.
So, panel members, any questions of Councillor Stavronos?
None from me, thanks.
Okay.
No question.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
The next speaker is an objector. I've permitted 2 objectors to speak on the matter, given the amount of public interest on it. The first speaker will be Mr. Yuri Resnick. Is Mr. Resnick there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so Mr. Resnick, firstly, again, if you have made any political donations, you need to declare that prior to speaking. And can I ask you to proceed? You have 3 minutes, and your traffic consultant will follow you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, we are My Stepping Stones. We are we occupy 2/3 of the existing building, being level 1 and level 2. The tennis club, Kuji Tennis Club, is on ground level, and the CrossFit gym is on ground level. The application before you is about the lower ground floor, using approximately half of it as a swim school. The building was designed and approved with the childcare use as the paramount use, being the anchor tenant for If this goes ahead, our business will be decimated. All the parents and staff are in agreement with that statement, and the panel should have a letter from the director before it, as sent to it by Andrea, who coordinates these things, indicating why. Gary Blandy, who was not able to speak yet, represents both the precinct, the Kuji precinct, and the tennis club. So from my point of view, I'll just say that it's paramount that the panel read his submissions before making up its mind. From our point of view, given the shortness of time, I just mentioned these short points. The lift is conditioned only to be used by the childcare centre and not the swim school. In order to make that viable, my request is, or our request is, that the lift be access controlled. The systems are in place already, that only with an access card should the lift be allowed to go down by handing swipe cards to people in wheelchairs, and everyone else should use the fire stair. It is not clear in the proposed conditions that the access should be controlled downwards. On the times, should this be approved, must this be approved, on the times of operation of the swim school lessons. I make a distinction between the operation of the swim school itself and the lessons. We request that there be a condition that the swim school lessons be from 10:15 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. Already the weekend has been deleted. The reason for a 10:15 a.m. start is the two things. Our staff, the last shift to start comes at 10 a.m. They can never find anywhere to park already. Therefore, if they could be allowed to park, and then the swim school could start at 10:15 a.m. We also have parents looking for parking, not finding it until 10 a.m. So if they could start at 10:15 a.m., should this have to be approved, as Councillor Andrews and as Stavrinos have submitted. The next thing is we require a 15 minutes space between one swim school lesson finishing and another starting. The reason for that, it takes that long for children to get out, to change and to leave. Otherwise, you're going to have an overlap of 6 children and their parents, so 6 cars already having parked, while the 6 cars for the kids in the pool having not yet left. So essentially, you're going to have an impact of 12 vehicles all the time. That cannot be handled. I've received a surprise from the fire brigade. This is very important because it's safety, it's fire. There was a false alarm. The fire brigade attended and went to the lower ground floor. They were surprised to find a swimming pool there, illegally built in an over-excavated, overbuilt area. That's all detailed in the report. Their main concern was that they do not have any knowledge, and they're worried about the chlorine storage, the massive chlorine storage, over 250 kilograms of chlorine for such a pool, and acid, which must be mixed together. Proper storage is required. I've sent a submission from the Safe Work Australia to the panel. You should have that. And there are requests for special storage, 5-meter spaces, all that's in there. None of it's provided for, considered or raised in the DA or in the council assessment report. Moreover, chlorine gas immediately under a childcare centre, which is exactly where it would be, with openable and opened windows. They don't have any air conditioning. Chlorine gas escaping from those windows and 24/7 affecting the childcare centre. The only time those windows should be closed, are conditioned to be closed, is for acoustic reasons during the swim school hours. Chlorine gas is a toxic gas. It was used in World War I. If it's as the first gas ever used in war, if it's ever used, if it's ever builds up in large enough quantities, It says here in Encyclopedia Britannica that chlorine gas is at room temperature a gas. It is toxic, it is corrosive, it has a choking smell, inhalation causes suffocation, constriction of the chest, tightness, etc.
Mr. Resnick, can I ask you to wrap up? I think we
my
have the documents.
My wrap up to you is that Councillor Andrews and Councillor Stavrinos made motherhood statements. Neither has contacted us as the main operator, 2/3 of the building. None of them have ever come and seen our centre or how this would impact. Their motherhood statements do not progress this DA. They simply confuse the matter. So bottom line is a swim school is appropriate. A swim school is a good idea, but not in this building. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, panel.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions of Mr. Resnick?
None from me.
No question.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next speaker. That's Mr. Oleg Senakov. Mr. Senakov, I believe, is a traffic consultant engaged by the Childcare Centre.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon. Can everyone hear me well?
We can hear you.
Yes, thank you. As you said, I'm a traffic engineering consultant. I'm here on behalf of the previous speaker, Mr. Resnick. And in April this year, I prepared a report and review of the traffic report, which was submitted in support of the application. And I made a number of points in that report. I also made myself familiar with the Council's officer's assessment, and in particular with the Council's development engineer report. And I couldn't find a reference to the report which I prepared, which tells me that maybe some points were omitted. The number of points raised by the Council's development engineer conform with what I found, and in particular, the estimated parking demand was 6 to 7 vehicles rather than 3 to 4, and no room for discount, and also a serious lack of parking in the vicinity of the site. So I'd like you to just add a few points on that. Believe me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard from one of the previous speakers that's a statement to the effect that council officers supported the development proposal with regard to parking impacts. My reading of the development engineer's report is different. It found many issues, and it actually recommended a number of severe restrictions on days and hours of operation, should it be approved, to make sure that it is outside of the peak hours of the childcare drop-off and pick-up times. And to that, what I found when I reviewed the report prepared by McLaren Traffic Engineering is that the areas they looked at, quite a few of them too far from the centre to be considered, convenient for parents with children, with small children, for both the childcare, the existing childcare, and the swim school. So I would say that the first 100 meters from the site are very important and critical. And there will be a huge competition for parking spaces in that particular area, and particularly for the 10-minute parking spots, which are right in front of the centre designed for the childcare. Childcare parents naturally park there for about 7 minutes on average, which is that statistics from the RMS. Whereas for the swim centre, there will be a average stay of about probably 30, 40, 45 minutes if you account for dressing up, dressing down in the shower, and they will be staying there. And there's no way council can police and enforce the 10-minute limit in this area, which means the parents from a childcare will be pushed away and they have to walk longer distances, cross the intersections without any facilities for crossing, and in inclement weather as well. So on that basis, I suggest that it is not an appropriate development to make such competition in these very tight parking conditions.
Thank you. Is that your presentation, Mr. Sadakov?
Yes, I could add a few more words if I'm allowed, but in essence,
very
yes.
quickly.
Yes. Also to the issue of the lift, as mentioned before, it is not designed and is not suitable for use by both facilities at the same time, because one is the swim center is at the bottom level, Again, if the centre is approved and it's made a condition that the users of the swim centre don't use the lift, there has to be some physical restriction on that, like a swipe card or something, because there is no way of enforcing simply a condition which is on paper. That's the all. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions of Mr. Sanikoff?
No, not from me.
Okay. I do have one, and that is there's parking restrictions have been imposed there that you referred to. I believe it provides, I think, 6 spaces for the childcare centre, which is 10-minute restricted parking at certain hours. I think 7 a.m. till 9 and 3:30 till 6. Are you suggesting that doesn't work, that it's not being policed or it's not capable of being policed?
Well, I'm saying that it is difficult to police, yes, because council officers, the parking inspectors, they have to make a specific task for themselves to police these spaces every 10 minutes. And I believe it's difficult to do. It can be as a campaign sometimes, it can be done, but not on a regular basis.
Was it your observation that it wasn't being, drivers weren't following the restrictions, or was your observation that it's actually working quite well for the childcare centre?
No, I cannot make a statement to that effect, because when I was doing my assessment, when I visited the site, unfortunately, that was when the COVID-19 restrictions just started operating. Everything was basically closed. I could only assess and report on the number of parking spaces within certain distances.
Okay, thank you. I had no further questions.
Chair, I guess I've got a follow-up question on that. Would you say as a traffic engineer that if there is a time restriction put in place to assist the drop-off of business like a childcare centre, that it would be reasonable for someone from that business to help in the orderly movement of those vehicles to ensure adequate parking like happens at schools?
Schools have normally a larger number of children, a larger number of staff. It is quite difficult for a childcare centre, which has limited number of staff, and they have to be with children at all times to maintain the ratio, to find another person to control this activity. I've never seen that done in the childcare centres before, and I've done surveys and reports on probably over 60 or 70 childcare centres, including a report for RMS on the operation of childcare centres. So I'm quite familiar with that. I've never seen that done due to this restriction, what I just described.
Okay, thank you. That concludes that presentation. We now invite the applicant's representative, Mr. George Caravas, to address us and respond perhaps to some of the comments made previously. Mr. Caravas. Do we have Mr. Caravas present? I thought I saw him in the waiting room at one stage.
Mr. Chair, I do apologise for interrupting. If no questions be further asked of me, can I be excused? I have another meeting to go to.
Certainly. Yeah, and that's true of everybody that's presented. If they don't wish to remain, they're free to leave. So thank you for your presentation so far.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Caravas there?
Mr. Chair, yes, he is on the list, but yeah, he's muted. But I can't see. George, are you with us? You're on mute. It's your turn to present, if you're there.
All right. Well, look, we might have to move on then to the next item. I notice actually Mr. Caravas is speaking on behalf of both applicants on both items, so perhaps he'll be able to join us shortly. The next item on our agenda is development application 621 of 2019 for 60 Dolphin Street in Kuji. We did receive a late submission on this one. It was submitted to the panel from Ms. Sue Musgrave, so we acknowledge the receipt of that. We have three speakers. Councillor Kathy Nielsen is the first of those speakers, so Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to say that I support the officer's recommendation for refusal, and note particularly point 4 of the recommendation for refusal, and I quote, "The proposal does not comply with the relevant requirements of the RDCP 2014 with regards to external wall height, floor to ceiling height, building depth, building facades and overshadowing. The variations will result in adverse amenity impacts on neighbouring properties with regards to visual bulk and overshadowing." Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Panel members, any questions of the Councillor? I'm getting nods, so thank you for your presentation. The next speaker is an objector, Mr. Michael Rebillard. Mr. Rebillard.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
We are architects, and we represent the some of the residents of 4 Powell Street, directly to the south of the project. Tony Moody was also engaged, a town planner, and he's written extensive objections to the proposal. Naturally, we support the conclusion that planner Louis Corey came to. We found him very thorough and very helpful. He came out to the site more than once. I think he's well on top of what the proposal was. I think he gave the applicant ample opportunity to amend what I would describe as an aggressive application, where essentially the top floor is a separate apartment and sort of pretends to be within the roof, but really it's the roof is walls, which is where a lot of the objections came, a lot of the impact came on the neighbours to the south and other neighbours as well. But as well as, so I agree with everything that Councillor Nielsen said just before, which obviously reiterated the planner's conclusion. But I understand that in the assessment of planning proposals, that no essential items can be deferred, and I wish to draw the panel's attention to 2 items which I don't think have been adequately discussed. Our client at 4 Powell Street yesterday submitted a geotechnical assessment of the excavation of the project. The project proposes excavations right up to the boundary, and the geotechnical engineer expressed concern about the stability of 4 Powell Street to achieve that excavation. It would require rock bolts being inserted under our client's property in order to create that excavation. And I think that should be included in the assessment and add to the reasons that this application should be refused. And the last one is in the car parking. We feel that the maneuverability of cars in the garage level, the basement level, is nearly impossible. I understand that all the panel members are expert at these things, and if you look at the basement level and imagine yourself trying to drive in or out when there are other cars parked in there, it would be extremely difficult. So you would not only would you have to be a very skilled driver, but even as a skilled driver, it would be extremely difficult, and I think unsupportable. I'm well familiar with the ground floor resident directly behind at 4 Powell Street, and I've been to her apartment, Mrs. Charity Haynes, several times, and I've seen the project, and I asked the panel to uphold the planner's recommendation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rebillard. Is there any questions from the panel members? No, it seems not. So thank you for
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
That's fine.
I'll mute again then.
Okay, now I understand we have Mr. Caravas waiting in the lobby. And Mr. Caravas, are you there? Frank, are you able to assist? I saw
apparently George is having some technical issues from his end. So he's unable to unmute himself.
Okay.
So perhaps, George, can I suggest, would you be able to dial in instead? There is a dial-in number included in the invitation that we've sent out. So there's a dial-in number and there's a conference ID, and you can call that number from your mobile phone and you'll be able to join in the meeting. Mr. Chair, may I suggest that we proceed, and I'll speak to George offline.
There's a it's showing he's present on my screen.
Yep, he's having difficulties unmuting himself.
All right. Well, in that case, I guess we proceed to the third item on the agenda, which is modification application, actually, for DA 238 1998. It's modification E for 169 181 Dolphin Street, Kuji. We've had late submissions received from Mr. Stephen Sheldon and Mr. and Mrs. Sean and Dominic Cleary. So I acknowledge that we have received those, panel members have received those. I have 4 registered speakers, the first of whom is Councillor. So Councillor Kathy Nielsen, again, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Panel Chair. I just want to say that I find that the police comments on page 137 of the business paper particularly important regarding this issue and regarding the seating arrangements, proposed outdoor seating arrangements, and the increase in patrons and so on. And I would say that I'm totally in supportive of their concerns, and I think they very clearly explain the concerns. So I won't go over that, but I will also say that I don't see how it'll be easy to maintain an appropriate distance between the benches so that pedestrians can easily walk by. And it is very important to note that this area carries a very large pedestrian traffic, not just for swimmers, but for people doing this very popular coastal walk. And to protect the safety and amenity for residents, I don't think the request for extra seating should be granted. Am I allowed to read something very quickly from the Kuji Precinct Committee Chair on their behalf?
On their behalf, certainly.
Thank you very much. So they say, and this is from their Chair, Mark England, the pedestrian access and safety. This area of the pedestrian plaza has never been licensed for alcohol and is a busy pedestrian thoroughfare used every day by locals crossing to go to or from the bus or the local shops. In summer and on fine weekends, it is used by visitors and locals alike in preference to the busy beach promenade. The applicant may say there is still sufficient pedestrian access through this area, as the tables will be located west of the light poles. However, people currently cut across the area, and why should elderly and other pedestrians be denied this convenience, especially when laden down with shopping? In addition, we know from the Dolphin Street frontage that hotel patrons spill over from the actual footprint of the tables with bags and dogs and playing children, as well as passers-by whom they know. Whilst this is manageable in the larger area on Dolphin Street, it is not manageable in the narrow area as proposed. COVID. A matter largely ignored in the council report is COVID. During these times, use of this part of the pedestrian plaza has been and remains essential due to the large numbers of people on the beach promenade. Furthermore, it is highly likely that this current pandemic will last for some time and may well be followed by other pandemics. Therefore, to place permanent furniture in this area shows a lack of understanding of how important this thoroughfare has been and is to the public health of people. The other concern is the increased intensity of alcohol provision. At a recent council meeting, councillors made much of the fact that the problems with crime and antisocial behaviour in Kuji can be attributed to the two large alcohol venues, the Kuji Bay Hotel and the Pavilion. In the light of this, it seems unconscionable that council would consider approving an increase in patrons for one of these venues. And noise. Residents of Baden Street and further along Beach Street are affected by noise from the pavilion when patrons congregate on Beach Street frontage after leaving the hotel or prior to entry. The location has an amphitheatre effect. Having 54 patrons drinking alcohol in this location until 10 p.m. will increase the noise and disturbance experienced by nearby residents. I have one more paragraph, sorry. Aesthetics and heritage, something not addressed in the council report, is the fact that the pedestrian plaza is attractive in itself with its tiling and landscaping. The placing of the heritage building in the plaza makes for a very visually pleasing space. Filling the eastern curtilage of the building with furniture will detract from this pleasing effect. And this is from the Kuji precinct.
Thank you, Councillor. Panel members, any questions of the Councillor? No, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. The next speaker we have is Ms. Patricia Dorian. Ms. Dorian, are you there? We can see your forehead.
Okay, great. Look, I know you've already heard this, but Kuji's always been a place appreciated by locals, but it has been a hidden gem, and I think Council has done a great job in making it a place appreciated by many. We want it to be a thriving and dynamic place enjoyed by locals and visitors, and at the same time we've got to be careful not to lose the relaxed community feel that defines Kuji. Space under consideration looks like a perfect space for outdoor tables and chairs, and it is. But it's also the perfect non-commercial hangout space for visitors and locals alike to keep the soul of Kuji alive. It's not a large area, but it is the only plaza area we have. Heavily utilised by people with coffee, dogs, boogie boards, just milling around and talking. And it's the only paved space for this to happen. It's the best paved space at the beach and should be retained for public use. The promenade and the central paved areas are essential for through traffic. Lots of people walking up and down, having the occasional chat. It's not suitable for larger groups just hanging out, and that is a space that we need. There are other issues that have been highlighted in the comments that I'll touch on. While there's the 2.5 metre gap between the buildings and the table, you need to bear in mind the queue of people lined up outside the pavilion to get in, and that queue wraps around that area, and they are not in single file. I mean, they're young people who are standing together talking to each other. So as per the police report, that queue does cause quite a problem and would make it difficult for other pedestrians to walk by. On the easterly side, you've got bike racks. So you've got people with bicycles and everything coming and going. So it will be quite crowded. We know also that the proposal will bring extra people, additional demands for parking, extra deliveries of supplies, and in other words, will put stress on an area already pretty much at capacity. And I know that you've heard all that before. The essential thing is to keep the soul of Kuji as a place where people can hang out and talk with a friend, have kids and dogs mingle, stand around with a coffee, look at the water without involving commercial seating. We don't want to become like some parts of the Med where the enjoyment of the waterfront is only for the wealthy. We need this plaza. It's a recreational area heavily utilised by the public for recreation, and we'd like to leave it that way. Thanks.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions of Ms. Dorian? No? So thank you for your submission. I've allowed an additional objector to speak on this item given the extent of public interest. So Mr. Stephen Garner, I believe, is hopefully present to address us.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Mr. Garner.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, you can. Okay, hi. My name's Stephen Garner. I'm a local Kuji resident. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us today. I hope you and your families are coping well in these difficult times. I have two key objections to make, one technical and one ethical. My first point is this DA is not a modification, it's a new DA. And my second and more important point is, regardless of its form, this DA is a significant one. It's on public land and it should be opened up to full public consultation. You may be aware that the owners of the Pavilion Merivale last year had its employment agreement terminated by the Fair Work Commission for paying below award rates to its staff, some of whom worked at the Pavilion. They call this unfair agreement a zombie agreement. Just as the applicant pushed employment law to its limits, they're now doing the same with planning laws. This is a zombie DA. It literally never dies. This DA was granted in 1998, 22 years ago. It was an approval to build seating on public land south of the building. After 20 years of alterations, in 2018, it was finally built. That should have been the end of it. But here we are, 2 years later, with the same DA, and they're looking for more public land. The DA process was not designed to be exploited like this. I've made a more thorough written submission to address this point, but in truth, no amount of case law or legal wrangling will change the common sense argument that when you want to build a new structure on a new parcel of public land, it should be considered a new DA. It benefits the applicant for the panel discussion to hinge on a technicality, because while we're discussing technicalities, we're not discussing the bigger issue, and we should address the bigger issue, which leads to my second point. This conversation should be about the use of public space, who has access to it, and how we use it. We're about to have a well-informed public debate about seating on Kuji Bay Road. This DA should undergo the same scrutiny. This DA is a backdoor appropriation of public space without public consideration. This represents special treatment of the applicant. Let's be clear, this issue is not about footpath dining. This is about the applicant taking over more and more of the public domain by placing permanent, private seating in a well-used public thoroughfare. As Councillor Nielsen has already noted, this space is already in use every day by the public. This is not about helping out a small cafe struggling to adapt to COVID. The Pavilion have 3 stories of internal dining and a rooftop outdoor terrace. They already have 13 tables outside on public land. They don't need more public space. They want it because we're giving it away cheap. If this DA passes, we'll have 120 outdoor seats on public land without a single table to accommodate a wheelchair. That would be shameful. I believe there should be a transparent and open dialogue with the public before we put a velvet rope around the commons and turn it into a VIP lounge for Merivale patrons. Merivale represents the interests of their shareholder. I hope the panel will take some time today to consider the interests of the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garner, and I confirm that the panel members do have that submission that you made, so thank you for that. Panel members, any questions of Mr. Garner? The answer to that is no, so thank you for your presentation.
Thanks.
Finally, I have the representative of the applicant, Ms. Deirdre Hilton, on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. My name is Deirdre Hilton. I'm a Group Operations Manager for Merivale. I've worked in various roles at Kuji Pavilion since its opening with us in 2014. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. We have been operating externally, these external tables, since 2015 with a proven record of compliance in safe trading and maintenance for the area and for the community. In a time where patrons and our guests particularly are wanting a more spacious and particular outdoor area to enjoy as a result of COVID, we believe now is the time to respond to that demand and to give appropriate introduction of additional seating to people in the area. We have gone above and beyond for area management in the time that we have been operating this venue, which is highlighted not only in our plan of management but also in our day-to-day operation, which we've always been in close communication with the police around. We have not only management but our own staff as well as security, making sure that the area is maintained not only just for our guests, but for public safety as well, including this seating. The primary use of these tables, despite what the objectors have outlined, is for alfresco dining. You cannot dine outside on these tables. You cannot drink on these tables without dining. We have always respected that and been 100% compliant. We have also provided casual seating that is for people that have children that potentially want to have just gelato or a coffee. So it can be used however the community wants to use that space. To suggest that it is going to bring additional alcohol consumption in an inappropriate way to this area is quite simply just unjustified. In relation to where we go to from the ample space, as per our consultant planner's submission, from that report, it is clear that they believe that there is ample passing space for all additional people to walk through that area that we're suggesting additional tables be introduced to. In relation to address the point around the additional deliveries, this is not going to bring any more than, yes, there's a maximum seating out there for 54 people, but anybody who's familiar with this area understand that those tables can be used for twos. We're talking that there might be an addition, of to 10 to 12 more people at times. Yes, at the weekends there will be more. It's not going to lead to any additional volume for deliveries for traffic that are coming to this area in relation to servicing those guests. I would like to mention just from the last speaker there, Stephen, in relation to what he is referencing around our ECA, etc. for the staffing for here. Not only do I think it's inappropriate to include in his submission, but actually the details that you have referenced are entirely inaccurate. We do not have shareholders to report to. We are a privately owned business owned by a family that have done a huge amount over the 6 years in this time to care for this area. Yes, we are a busy venue, we understand that, but we are certainly not driven by commercial drive all the time. We want to be a positive and a helpful contribution to this community, which, if you look at it objectively, we have been over the time that we have here. We're simply asking for additional space for guests that want to sit al fresco and enjoy the beach and enjoy this community, to be given the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions of Ms. Hilton?
I've got one about substantially the same development, which needs to be assessed against the original DA. Not sure if you've got your planner with you, but can you just outline your key arguments about why the proposal as it now stands is substantially the same as originally approved?
And perhaps just adding to that, why you chose to do it as a modification rather than a new application?
Unfortunately, I don't have the planner with me to be able to answer that very directly. My understanding was Carrie Boylatt, who made the application, was in communication with council, and that was what was agreed to be the best application. But considering that it is I believe something that has been existing for quite some time, has obviously been amended once already, it was believed that it was an appropriate application as an amendment as opposed to a separate application.
Okay. Any further questions?
Just had a question. You mentioned that there's ample passing space in that proposed new area, which is on the Beach Street, the eastern side. Do you have the measurement between, say, the building and the bicycle rack, and how much of that space will this new seating area consume?
I believe that that's been included in the submission, but I don't have that information very specifically to hand. I know that it's 2.5 metres to the tables from the building, and I believe it's a similar distance on the other far side.
Okay.
Yeah, any further questions? If not, I had a question, because you mentioned in your address that this was related to the COVID restrictions to provide more space. That's not clear from the application, as I understand it. Is this proposed as a temporary measure to, in fact, maintain seating numbers but spread them out?
No, what has been referenced in the application is that the demand for additional outdoor tables is there. It's quite simply a timing thing that COVID has obviously, as we all know, heightened wanting people to have more alfresco options, more space, and a feeling of safety to be able to dine outside. So not necessarily what prompted what it is. I know it wouldn't be temporary, it would be a permanent occasion.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That was my understanding. All right, if there's no further questions, I thank you for your presentation, and we will, as I said at the outset, move to a separate meeting to deliberate, and the results will be on the website.
Thank you.
I'm hoping that we have Mr. Caravas here somewhere. I've seen an image of the screen occasionally.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Is that Mr. Caravas?
Yes, it is.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I can hear you. We can't see you. That's fine. You're here to address us on 2 items, so we may as well deal with them in order. I hope that you may have heard the other speakers on both of those items, but perhaps you can confirm that or otherwise. So, Mr. Caravas,
Before I start, I was on the Teams video conference. I was on unmute, but apparently the Randwick Council system found me as mute, which is it is what it is. I did hear the speakers for the first matter. I did not hear the speakers for the second matter, but that's not of any great consequence because, and I'll explain that in a moment. So, if you allow me to speak on the first matter first.
I certainly will. So please proceed. You have 3 minutes to address us on the Bream Street Kuji pool proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, members of the panel. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant and in support of the application. I have with me Mr. Arif Zafarelli, who's the owner of the site, and he only wants to say a couple of words after me, and also the architect in case there's any questions. Now, we concur with the thorough assessment contained in the assessment report, and of course with the recommendation for approval. Now, while the approval has been conditioned to reduce the intensity and hours of operation, we do not seek to challenge any of the conditions. We're happy with the conditions as they are in the assessment report. By way of background, in August 2019, the original application was submitted for the proposed swim school, and the council officer's report assessing that application, and as well as the council's traffic engineer, both recommended approval and were happy with the scheme. Despite this, the panel back then refused the application for a number of reasons, and the proposal has been redesigned, the proposal in front of you, to take in consideration those reasons, and now comprises a revised layout that better complies with the BCA, an improved level of internal circulation by use of the stair and the 9-person lift, a capping of the number of children to 6 per half hour, modified hours of operation and additional information on the operation of the swim school, as well as additional survey information and updates on all expert reports. As a result, the proposal now satisfies the panel's issues. As you would be aware, and you've been made aware by a number of other people before you, the swim school is a very important use. I'm not going to labour on that point. We're all aware of that. Now, as indicated in the assessment report, the key issues associated with this submission include acoustic, access and traffic and parking issues. In terms of the acoustic issues, the acoustic report has been prepared, submitted to council and assessed by council and is satisfied by council. Similarly, in terms of access, the access report confirms compliance, and we can also comply with the council's condition for BCA compliance. In respect to the traffic and parking, a detailed traffic report has been prepared over and above the number of traffic reports previously prepared and supported, and this one again has been supported, subject to conditions, and as I said, we're happy to accept those conditions. As indicated, the council's experts supported the original scheme, and now, of course, the revised scheme. So it's been to council staff twice, and both times they've supported it. We've now addressed all the matters that were raised in the panel's previous determination, and for that reason, we are of the opinion that the submission can be approved. Just 3 matters, if I may, just in responding to a couple of the issues raised by the neighbours. Firstly, in terms of the lift, we are happy to include a condition to have use of the lift by a swipe card. And secondly, in terms of the issues raised by the operator of the childcare centre, the pool is designed for toddlers, and the use of chemicals such as acid and chlorine will not be used. and the centre has adequate mechanical ventilation, which includes engineers, which the council's engineers have indeed supported. Now, a swimming pool in an indoor space is not unusual. I, in fact, lived in one for many, many years where we had one in the common ground. It was totally enclosed and adequately ventilated, and it did have flooring and it didn't blow up. So we're happy to accept any standing conditions for that. I would now like to pass over to Mrs. Zaffarel to just say a couple of words, and again, after that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, members of the panel. My name is Ara Zaffarelis, and my family and I are very proud owners of the subject premises. I take the opportunity to thank the council officers for their recommendation of approval. I would like to highlight the subject premises were granted compliant development certification approval in June 2018. Once the approval was granted, the subject works only then commenced. The suggestion that any unauthorised works may have taken place is incorrect, which we strongly oppose. My family and I have worked tirelessly with Randwick Council during the DA process, ensuring any concerns were fully addressed. We passionately believe the proposed use located is an exceptional facility. Will be a fantastic opportunity to provide a much-needed offering. We are proud of contributing back to the community with such an important essential service. Thank you very much.
Okay. Panel members, any questions arising from those presentations?
Yeah, I've got a question through the chair. Thanks, Mr. Fletcher. How confident are you that period between 4 and 5:30 on Monday to Wednesday, which is of some concern to council engineering staff and traffic experts, given the surrounding uses and lack of parking, how confident are you that that period will be able to be successfully managed?
We can only rely on the expert reports that have been provided to us, and on the basis of those reports, and also the small number of children. As I said, it's a maximum of 6 children per session. We believe that is not going to create an undesirable conflict. And if that's the case, and there is some concern within council, what would your response be to the question, a theoretical question, if the panel was minded to support the application, but place a trial on those hours between 4 and 5:30, which is seen to be most problematic by council staff, for a year, so that those impacts could be monitored and engaged before continuing beyond that? What would you say to that? I mean, we can't reject any condition, of course, because that's up to the panel to make. We wouldn't want a condition like that. It creates uncertainty for the end user, and at the end of the day, the problem with some of these matters, given you have such objections that have been raised, yeah, there could be vexatious objections raised, and no one would know that, unfortunately.
Okay. Any other questions, panel members?
In relation to that, as we are aware that there's parking is quite in high demand in the area. So what would the applicant say to if the Monday to Friday hours of operation were limited to 4 p.m. and so even as an option to even not even consider the trial period, but just stop at 4 p.m. Monday to Friday? How would the applicant consider that?
Unfortunately, it wouldn't be viable. The model initially works on far extended hours. The hours have been reduced twice, and it's basically down to the bone in terms of viability, both in terms of the student numbers as well as the time. So at 4 o'clock, unfortunately, it would not work, and it'll be a real shame because it's such an important use, and to lose that use from this area for the sake of 1.5 hours, which, as I said, has been supported by all the experts. We're not dealing with people we're not dealing with hearsay. We're dealing with people that are experts, and it's gone to 2 different panels, and at both panels, council's experts as well as our experts have agreed that it is satisfactory.
So I think, so the current condition proposed is 4 p.m. close Thursday and Friday. So that is acceptable? Okay, but not also Monday to Wednesday?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Any further questions?
I just picked up on for the pool use, it's targeted at for use by toddlers, and also identified that there's a sort of an incompatibility there with stair access. Getting toddlers up and down stairs is can be quite challenging, and there could be a WHS issue there, potential for falls and injuries, and considering that the lift is only for disabled access.
A number of the people that have approached us actually live on three-story walk-up flats. They don't have a lift. So some people can negotiate stairs, but to say that the stairs are not safe, I can't comment on that. The stairs are quite safe. The existing childcare centre uses the stairs themselves. Obviously, a lift is easier access, but it's not to say that the stairs are unsafe.
Okay.
I've been also advised by the operator that the childcare centre uses the stairs every single day. The other stairs.
Yeah. I think Peter Romney has a question as well. I think you're on mute, Peter.
Okay. Mr. Caravas, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. My question is similar to my colleagues. It's about the stair. I'm just looking at the lower ground floor plan under the subject application. It shows the stair also shows another flight. This is the lower ground. There's not another level below this, is there?
No, there isn't.
No. So this stair terminates at this level.
That's correct.
Okay. And do you think, the landing or the landing at the bottom of that stair, which somebody negotiating that stair would have to come down the stair, turn left and then turn right out through the inward opening door. It
right.
appears to be very tight. Do you think that's a fair representation of the configuration of that stair?
The door will always be open, right? That door below will always be open, and it's attached by a magnet behind. So
it's not a fire stair.
Yes, it is a fire stair, but we have had an access consultant review it, and they've supported it from an access point of view in terms of circulation.
But from a fire point of view, if it's a fire stair, one would have thought the door needs to be closed.
I would have thought so.
And in the event there's a fire, the door will close automatically by magnet. So there will be a sensor on the door.
Okay.
Required.
The fire could be above. Anyway, yeah.
And Mr. Caravas, I think I heard you say that there wouldn't be any pool chemicals stored here.
That's right.
So how was that pool able to be kept safe for multiple users if it doesn't have some sort of treatment, chemical treatment?
The applicant can answer that question.
It's a pool for toddlers. So primarily, the type of chemical that's used is an alkaline-based product, which is obviously treats babies well, so it's not susceptible to skin and that type of condition. So it's not an adult pool as such. So from that regard, it's a very sensitive level quality of water, meaning that we don't have an issue in regards to storing dubious amounts of chemicals and acids and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One final question. Would it not be possible to provide access to this swim school, this space, from the outside?
No.
Okay.
Why?
Why? Well, because...
No. Why is it not possible?
Oh, sorry.
There's no part of that space where you get access compliantly, like you can, with a stairs that's designed for the purpose of access as well as fire. You've got an excellent entry point off the main street. We've got a report in here that from Design Confidence, one of the leading access consultants, stating that what was provided goes above and beyond BCA compliance. He thoroughly recommends the use of that stair because it creates familiarity with everyday users.
Okay, thank you.
I only had one question to clarify, and it's relating to the statement by the operator or owner to suggest there's been no unauthorised works. That's not my understanding of the council's understanding. In fact, it's my understanding the pool's actually in place and most of the work has in fact been undertaken. Is that not correct?
The work got undertaken under a CDC, which was issued in 2018. Once the CDC was issued, the works commenced.
Right. Okay. So
prior to that,
the work that's been done, you're saying, has been done under a CDC.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. But most of what you're seeking is in fact in place. It's a relatively minor amount of work to complete the facility so it can be used. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions from the panel? No? Well, thank you for those presentations, and that concludes that item. But Mr. Caravas, we are happy to hear from you in relation to the second item for 60 Dolphin Street, Kuji. There were two previous speakers, both of whom supported the recommendation for refusal.
Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the panel, I'm speaking against the recommendation, and I have the architect here with me, Mr. Andreas Antonidi. He's available to answer any questions. My presentation will be quite short. All we're seeking is deferral of the application in order to provide us with the opportunity to revise the scheme and address the issues raised in the assessment reports. Now, by way of history, the application was submitted in 2019 in November, and during the course of the application, additional information was requested by the applicant and duly was provided. Now, some 10 months later, we are confronted with a report recommending refusal of the application. If we knew these issues, we would certainly have revised the proposal to address the issues which primarily relate to the roof form and the wall height. So for that reason, in fairness to our client, we just request deferral of the application to give us the opportunity to relook at the roof and address the height issues. And in doing so, I suspect we'll also be addressing the issues raised by the neighbours. So that's all I have to say at this stage. We're happy to answer any questions of the panel.
Okay, so panel members, questions? I mean, I think, Mr. Caravans, the primary concern, as you say, relates to the non-compliance in terms of the type of roof or accommodation within the upper level, and consequently non-compliance with wall height criteria in particular, and the percentage of floor space. So do I take it that those are matters that are matters you believe can be resolved to comply with those provisions?
Yes, I think so, yes.
So that's a significant reduction in the floor area of the upper floor if that were the case in a design change.
There is a design change, and we've been looking at a mansard roof, and we've been looking at any other types of roof forms. So, but yeah, between Friday and today. We just haven't had the opportunity to refine and fine tune those, and also to discuss it with council to make sure they're happy with our interpretation.
Okay, and if we were of a mind to defer to enable that to happen, I'm not preempting anything, but if we were, what time period would you require in order to address those concerns?
We'd be happy with 2 weeks, but I suppose there needs to be some time for the council to consider our application, our revised plan, and come back to us. So, you know, whether it's 4 weeks, I think 4 weeks would be more than enough.
So, sorry, to clarify, you'd need 4 weeks, including time for council to give you feedback?
We could easily do it in 1 to 2 weeks, but then the council staff would need another, you know,
they'd need to
time.
Sure.
Yeah.
May require re-advertising, etc. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, can I have a follow-up question? I guess my reading of the report, particularly about the wall height and the roof form controls, and also the context was that a revisiting of that upper level was required, and that may involve a more traditional pitched roof with dormer windows of 65%, and that might be linked to the units below. Now, that might fundamentally change the layout of units and potentially even the yield. So, Mr. Caravas, while you're open to revise the proposal, what is your brief? Is it still to achieve 5 units, in which case I'm assuming that might be one of the concerns of council that led to the recommendation for refusal, and perhaps the degree of change that might warrant a new application? What do you say to that?
Oh, I haven't given any thought to the number of units or the internal space. We've looked at externally how the roof may be altered, and as I said, we've looked at a number of mansard options, and I've also looked at a couple of the court cases that have been referred to in the council officer's report, and a subsequent one that hasn't. And we feel that, you know, we can reasonably provide something that can fit that wall height definition.
Okay. Any further questions from panel members? No. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Caravas.
Thank you, and apologies for the technical difficulties that we've had.
That's okay. That tends to happen with these meetings, I'm finding. So we've now heard from all of the registered speakers, and I thank them all for their assistance. In accordance with the panel guidelines, the public meeting will now be closed, and the panel will move to a closed meeting to deliberate and to vote on each of the matters. The outcome from voting and determination will be made available through the council's website, either late tonight or probably tomorrow. A recording of the public meeting will also be made available through the council website. I take this opportunity to thank the council staff for their assistance with today's meetings so far. And the time being 2:26, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you all for your attendance.